so-called flying saucers.
There's a whole fleet of them. Look on the SA. It's rotating.
Welcome to Kill the Stigma. Today we have with us Steven Bassett, the long advocate for UAP disclosure, UAP transparency. Been looking forward to this conversation for a while. And Steven, honestly, I'm gonna leave a lot to you because I know I've seen your interviews for a while, and I know you're really good at talking, and I'm kind of new to interviewing. I don't have much experience, so I'm a little bit nervous. Hopefully, I can wing this though. But yeah, Steven, how you doing today?
I'm doing fine. Let me get the sound up a little bit. What I would
Okay.
suggest, here's a way to go on this. Why don't you just ask the some questions about the aspects of this that most either intrigue you or confound you, and I'll answer. All right. I think you'll find that's a very good way to get going.
All right. So honestly, what I want to know the most is should I should I when it comes to this topic of UFOs, UAP, should I be concerned or should I be is my life going to get affected by this at some point? Are people going to care? Is there going to be a paradigm shift? Um, Questions like that have really intrigued me. Is there going to be full disclosure one day, and what does that look like? So it's kind
Okay.
of
Well,
a
that's a number of questions. Pick one.
all right.
Pick one.
Let me see. Let me see.
Take your time.
All right. So why don't we just start with disclosure, man? Like, what does that mean to you?
Disclosure is a term that is developed over the last 20 years. It was around prior to that. It was used in the context of we want the information out. We want the government to tell us what it knows and so forth. But in 2001, as part of my activist efforts, I addressed the issue of language. And one of the areas was what is the name that we want to give to what we're trying to achieve? What is the point of all this? Is it just to learn that there's ETs here? Okay, fine. Is it uh, trying to reform the national security state? Whatever. And what do we call it? I mean, how do we define it? And I came up with the idea that, look, what we want is very simple. We would simply want the U.S. government to confirm that the presence of the non-human technology and non-humans is real, as per Roswell, 1947. They got a crash vehicle. We didn't make it, and there were bodies in it, and they weren't human. That fundamental single fact is enough to essentially explain what everything that comes forward. Now, if someone denies that, if they believe that Roswell was what the government says it is, which it's given about three or four explanations, then they may go, I'm confused. But what can I say? Read Don Schmidt's and Tom Carey's book, Witness to Roswell. Read the first one, read the second edition. And there's a few other books out there. The proof, the evidence is absolutely rock solid. It's not, it's from testimony and deathbed confessions, right? Um, and some documents, but it's enough. So,
There's a lot of documents. When it comes to July 4th to July 10th, July that area, there's a lot of documents that we got out of that, which is
yes.
interesting. Timing, the Twining memo. There's and many others. I think the FBI has one where they're asking for like access to the disk, and it's all around that time of Roswell, right? Like, what a coincidence. I was
It came
watching
from Roswell. It came from Roswell. And there was a lot of
right,
documents that allude back to. Okay, so what is the goal of the activist movement? We simply want that confirmed.
right,
The
right.
government confirms it. It's not enough that a well-known researcher confirms it or an airplane pilot or whatever. It has to come from the government. The government has to formally confirm it. That opens up the entire issue to to society, to science, to the public, to consider it, decide what to do about it, and so forth. Not just in the United States, because that confirmation, wherever it starts, whichever country goes first, will spread worldwide very quickly, and we will be living in what I call a post-disclosure era. Disclosure, as defined, it is a noun. It is a proper noun. It is capital D disclosure. It is an event. Simple, straightforward. A head of state comes out in front of the people and confirms that this is true. Now, shortly after that, I'm sure you're going to start learning things, and evidence is going to be manifest that is not known, and it'll all be confirmed. Not only that, more than one head of state will do it. That's the disclosure event, capital D. That's what the movement has been going towards. Now, it's 80 years since Roswell. It will be, 79 years since Roswell. And it looks as if finally we're about to have that event, that disclosure event, capital D. All right. So is that coming? Yes. The post-disclosure world that follows is coming. Yes. Now, what will that be like? We could spend hours talking about that. But that is what's going on. That has been the goal of the activist movement, and that's what's playing out right now. And we're just waiting to see when it'll happen. There's plenty that are continuing to put pressure on it. There's efforts politically. There's efforts in Congress. There's a huge number of podcasts addressing it. The media is covering it with thousands of articles and so forth. So it's very close. And you will live the rest of your life in the post-disclosure world.
Yeah, I think you're spot on, and I think we're closer than ever. I mean, the age of disclosure just came out. You had a bunch of people that were very high up in that movie itself talking about, the legacy program and non-human biologics. David Rush just came out too. Saw him and Megyn Kelly a few days ago speaking on that. And then I saw Moment of Contact. Have you seen that case, that movie by James Fox? There's a new one that just came out. That seems like a Roswell of its own in Brazil, you have a lot of witnesses, doctors saying that they handled the body. It's really interesting. And the thing is, what gets me is there seems to be a lot of confusion towards, at least from the government. It seems like they're sending messages that are mixed. Some pro-disclosure, some not that pro-disclosure. I mean, just take the Roswell case that we were talking about.
Roswell? Why files sound. Anyway, so let's get into Roswell a little bit, though, for just a second. First of all, Congressman Steven Schiff in 1993 started looking into this because his people were asking about it, his constituents. And he got the General Accounting Office to do go back and to look at the crash records. And they somehow, apparently, they were illegally destroyed, missing. So Stephen kept fighting the good fight. And he fought the good fight, but, he didn't win, right? So the GAO came short. Air Force did this whole thing about Roswell, this whole thing investigation, and went to Project Mogul, right? Which it's BS. And then they talked about the bodies back in 1997. They're like, Roswell case closed, and they call them dummies. But check this out. Let's see how many times they changed their story. And it's also very sad to see that I can't find any interviews of Steven Schiff, and he's not remembered in the community. No one ever talks about this. This guy was the only congressman in the 90s pushing for this. No one talks about him. He's just forgotten. And then in 1998, he just died of a very rapid cancer, very fast, out of the blue. Right after the Roswell case close came. We're talking free energy, anti-gravity, kind of fast cancer. And Professor Richard Dolan, that's what I call him, he agrees that something suspicious happened there. Is it conspiratorial? Maybe. I don't know.
Discrepancies such as these have led many to doubt the Air Force's insistence that Project Mogul is in fact the answer to the Roswell mystery. On Capitol Hill, the representative for New Mexico, Congressman Steven Schiff, is suspicious of the number of different explanations offered over the years.
We've had 3 different explanations from the military about what crashed. The first explanation is it was a flying disc, meaning flying saucer in today's terminology. They changed that and said, we made a mistake. It wasn't a flying disc, it was a weather balloon. I still find it amazing that the United States top bomber wing, with the only wing that was eligible to carry nuclear weapons at that particular time, would not know a weather balloon from a flying saucer, but apparently somebody didn't, according to them. So we then had the second explanation that this was a weather balloon, and we now have the third explanation that this was part of a highly classified radiation detection experiment. So we have 3 separate explanations as to what crashed, but no dispute that something crashed.
Was the Roswell crash.
In ATIP, we learned that the UAP event at the U.S. Army Airfield in Roswell in 1947 did actually occur. It was described to be a boot heel-shaped UAP that broke into 2 pieces on impact, and observers saw what looked like hieroglyphics or some type of writing on it. You might describe them as runes or glyphs, hieroglyphs that were actually on the craft itself.
I think you had Roswell, you know, they looked into some records and they couldn't find, they're like, oh, we destroyed, we couldn't find the records, or Steven Schiff was making an effort or something like that. And then in 97, they're like, oh, those weren't bodies. Those were, what did they say? I can't, the dummies. And then recently, I just saw a video that dropped in the National Archives. I think that was like a couple months ago or something, where it's like a crash that happened in Roswell in 1947. I don't know if you saw this. It's a video, and it doesn't look like a balloon crash there, but it has no context. It's just this crater, which I find, see, that's what I mean by confusing messages. Like, you know what I mean? Like, they say this, and then they switch their story. They're just really acting kind of very guilty at this point.
Well, look, this is part of the truth embargo. The government has gone to great lengths, spent a great deal of money to prevent the population of this planet from knowing that we have this non-human presence from elsewhere. I believe it's from the stars, other star systems. This is a sophisticated program, highly funded. The United States has invested a great deal in it, and they use all manner of tricks, structure, classification systems, non-disclosure agreements, and so forth, intimidation. Other countries are under a little less pressure than us, a lot less pressure than us, but they do what they have to do to keep this issue contained. Our allies have gone along with the U.S. policy, and Russia and the Soviet Union, for its own reasons, has decided not going to go there, and China the same way. So what you're seeing is, and referring to, are examples of instances where they're messing with the issue. Behind those things are far more sophisticated, robust structures, programs, policies that are maintaining this truth embargo. And you may say, well, why is it so necessary to spend so much and go to such lengths? The simple reason that the extraterrestrials, or technologically advanced non-humans that the government is trying to deny exist, can come and go and do what they want, whenever they want, how they want. They cannot be controlled. And so that was the problem the government faced. And as long as the extraterrestrials, or the non-human technologically advanced non-humans, as long as they were willing not to burst that bubble, to just say, force the issue, this truth embargo would last. And so the ETs, as I prefer to call them, have been very much complicit in this embargo, not 100%. For the same reasons and not in the same way, but they are allowing the government to continue this policy as we move towards, hopefully, disclosure, and have accepted, I guess you could say, the pace of it, but they have done a lot of things which have really challenged that embargo, not the least of which is shutting down our nuclear weapons. Um, so there's a complex dynamic here and an agenda on the part of the extraterrestrials regarding the pace of disclosure, how far they're willing to go, and so forth. And it's a long discussion, not for today, but there's ample evidence that there is an agenda, and overall, that ET agenda is in favor of advancing it, right?
Right.
But not resolving it. They're leaving that, at least for now, to us. And that's where we are with respect to that process.
And I think the ETs are a big part of disclosure. They have a big role to play on this because a lot of it could be even up to them. And what the secrecy tells me is that there's just something very important when it comes down to this topic. The United States government believes there's something very important here. And also another one of the things about the ETs, the NHI, whatever you want to call them, playing a role, for some reason there seems to be an increase in sightings. I mean, just take the last few years. There's been these flaps. I mean, if you want to call them drones, fine, call them drones. I mean, really, I don't. I think the one we had last year was really interesting. I live in Minnesota, and I was seeing this thing. So I'm telling you, it wasn't just New Jersey. You know what I mean? These things were
Right.
everywhere, and that caught my eye because that was happening almost on a daily basis, and it was crazy because I used to think, well, what if we have another Phoenix Lights in 2025? This is, I felt like that was almost there, but it was almost like the phenomena was almost trying to like hide itself or just like camouflage itself with strange looking objects, but not as crazy as the Phoenix Lights. Which, what the heck are they doing?
Let me
You
help you.
know,
Look, it's hard to know if sightings have increased. No, let me put it this way. It's hard to know if the ETs are more active of late. I think they have been, but it's also the case that the awareness level of the public continues to grow, and the number of, well, everybody has a camera now, so the motivation to even pay attention increases because you can actually film it. And so we had a major flap, and starting in late '94 all the way through '95. No, let me see if no. Yeah. Um, and what is a flap? A flap is a large number of sightings happening at the same time. There have been a number of these over the last 80 years. Uh, Probably the most famous was the 1952, July 52, uh, sightings over Washington that went on for like 11 or 12 days. There were quite a few of these, what we'll call Foo Fighters, plasma balls, not craft, but plasma balls. Whether those are craft, whether there's anything in them, we don't know, but they're not ours. If
right,
they're plasma technology, then they have the ability to use plasma technology in ways that we simply cannot do. But one of the things that gets cited are, of course, what were once called the Foo Fighters. And then, of course, there are craft, extant craft. But that was an example of that. And there have been other flurries of sightings. We call them flaps. I think the biggest one in history started in late 2024, when
hmm
they started turning up around ships. They started turning up over military bases. In other words, literally choosing to be over these kinds of locations, guaranteeing that they would get attention, guaranteeing the government would force to deal with it. And the videos started pouring in, turning up on the net. They're all, you could probably find them. They're all somewhere. They turn
yeah,
up on X, and that goes on, slides on down. But if you go to their number of YouTube uh, uh, channels and so forth that accumulate these things, and if you go find them, you can just see them one after another. This was going on all year. This was intentional, I believe. This was the ETs ramping up the situation because they were losing patience with the fact that we were making such progress to disclosure, but we wouldn't end it. We wouldn't do it, right? In other words, we were just not capable of pulling the trigger, and so they were pressing us very hard, and it put the U.S. government in a very tough position. And one of the ways that the principal way the government chose to deal with this was to launch our own drones up into the phenomena, particularly as it moved toward the East Coast. And so people were seeing literally drones different types. We have lots of drones. We have drones people don't even know about. We've been advancing that technology for decades. It's one of the most important, what would you say, military technologies being developed. You frequently hear people talk about the future of warfare is drones. Well, there should be no future of warfare, but that's another matter. And so they were flying the drones up. That really confused it. So it was a huge flap, and I believe, and it was covered. But the distinction I'm trying to make is that so much more people are looking and paying attention. And so is that more ET activity, or is that just more awareness of what they've been doing? I believe it's both. I believe the ETs ramped up their activity in 2024 into 25, and in 2024 well into 25, and that the people willing to pay attention and willing to film it grew. And this is just one example of why the truth embargo was doomed. It cannot sustain itself when the ETs are willing to do that and the people have the cameras. Unless you're going to take all the cameras away from everybody in the United States, that stuff is going to keep turning up every time the ETs decide to get rambunctious. And so that is my take on that.
Yeah, it's fascinating, and the targets also that these, and they weren't really doing any, they weren't hurting anybody, from what my understanding out of, but they were flying over Langley CIA headquarters. You know what I mean? Like for weeks, and then they were closing the airport. That's a message to someone, man. It's got to be a message to somebody that gets it in the National Security Council, or someone understands what they're trying to say. You know what I mean? I think. But yeah, that was fascinating. And I think these things are going to keep happening. I mean, I don't have much information on what's going on with that, but I have heard reports on airports getting shut down, and I've seen these reports even into China. In 2024, there was a flap that lasted like 3 or 4 days of UFOs or mystery drones, whatever, and they're making themselves known. But it's weird because I also think the phenomena changes its behavior. Like you get things like cattle, what happens to cattle, which is not pretty. And you get like abductions in the 80s. You get crop circles. You get now these drones, and I guess so. I don't know if it's like a new thing that they're doing, or if it's a new player in town, or yeah. What do you think they're doing, man? Just let me just throw that at you.
The simplest way I think to explain it is that they are engaging us in a number of complex ways. And by they, there's more than one species. We'll call it that. Okay. Species. That they don't look the same. So in that sense, they're different. It's not unreasonable to think that they're coming from more than one planetary system, right? But they've interacted with each other. It's part of, I guess you could say, a group. Galactic Federation is the term that gets thrown around a lot. I have no idea if it's Federation, but clearly there's more than one type. They're engaging us, and we know a lot about that engagement, right? We know what they look like because contactees have painted and drawn them. All right. We know about their behavior, a lot of their behavior. We know how they deal with humans when they do take them, when they're on the ship or elsewhere. And of course, we have photos and radar on their behavior, how they fly, and so forth. So we know a lot about them. And some of the most important things we know is their interest in nukes. They're very much interested in our nuclear weapons. They have turned them off. They've turned them off in the Soviet Union. Obviously, this is a very big deal. But more importantly, they have messaged us about them. Again, this is the way they choose to go about this. One could make the case, well, there's better ways to do this. There probably are. The point is that this is what they do. And so they give messages to contactees about future destruction, implying that this could be nuclear destruction. In other words, we're headed in a very bad direction. They've done it for some time. There are thousands and thousands of these kinds of reports. But they also, and this is interesting, odd, they actually land craft next to schoolyards and track the kids over, and they put messages in their head using telepathy regarding this future potential destruction. This is interesting. There are a number of these cases. Several have been heavily researched. The kids have given their testimony. It is consistent. And why? At minimum, they are they're putting these ideas in the heads of contactees and kids, knowing that they're going to then carry that forward, and it'll inculcate society to some degree. But I think they also know that it's going to get researched. In other words, you land next to a schoolyard and a bunch of kids get messages from ETs that are literally outside the craft. That's going to get researched. That's going to become an issue. Well, it has been, and books have been written, and films have been done, and so I just put this into the category of positive indoctrination. They're trying to get this idea into society as part of a slow process, which ultimately leads to acknowledging their presence formally by our governments, which represent nearly 8 billion people now. So the engagement also includes genetic work, we know for sure, and technology. There's evidence that the technology we have gotten is not simply gratuitous. In other words, there have been crashes, and we have taken those crash vehicles. But the evidence is emerging that there have been simply vehicles left for governments to obtain intact, right? That's relatively new, but it has emerged in the recent hearings and other stuff that's taken place. And so again, letting us have the technology. So that is the best way I can describe this engagement. You could go on for days and get into nuances and this and that, but thanks to the truth embargo, 90% of what you would be talking about would be speculation. In other words, the government is happy for us to speculate about this until the end of time, as long as we don't force the government to actually confirm it. And while speculation is interesting and has some value, we have speculated for nearly 80 years. There's enough speculation out there to take a lifetime to engage, and so I don't like to go there too much. I like to keep it tight, right? There are thousands of cases. My job is not to resolve any of them, right? My job is to get disclosure so that in the post-disclosure world they can be resolved one after the other. Real, not real. Not true, true. Happened, didn't happen. And establish a worldwide understanding of what took place since 47, the actual truth of it, what the government has done, and then make decisions of how we're going to advance as a civilization in a new era when the universal recognition of their presence is part of our knowledge base.
Well, I think you said it very well, though, when I asked you about what do you think they're doing. I mean, which means kind of some sort of reconnaissance over what we're doing with their military nuclear weapons, some sort of scientific experimentation, and with genetics and technology. Bam, that's well said. And it's kind of good because it's not that it's good. It's just it's not that scary from what we've seen. Because a lot of people, I think, might freak out, like when we have a presence here, we can't do anything about them, and we don't really know what they want or whatever. At least this says, they've been here for at least 80 years, and they're not going to come and commit mass,
Yeah.
So
there are people that will freak out at anything. That's not what's relevant. What's relevant is society, is the human race ready for this? We've been ready for it for some time.
I think so.
We've hundreds of, maybe thousands of hundreds of documentaries, hundreds and hundreds of fiction films about extraterrestrials, worldwide, and of course the ability of the new media to get this information everywhere, all at once. We know, so we're ready. The fact that some people will be uncomfortable, what can I say? All right, I'm very uncomfortable with the nuclear arms race, right? And a lot of people would freak out if some of those missiles were launched. Okay, does that mean we can't address it? Absolutely not. Does that mean it doesn't have to be resolved? Of course not. So we're ready. Someone wants to argue that we're not, that's fine. but they're not. I'm quite convinced that the human race is ready for this, and we've got to get this information as soon as possible because we are pushing our luck. As a civilization, we are pushing and pressing our luck. We've gotten away with some potentially terrible outcomes, but we can't keep that up. At some point, we're really going to cause a major problem. And of course, the number one issue is nuclear war. But there's other things that we are not addressing. So potential for mass disease, global pandemics, environmental impacts, and so forth. We're just pushing all the envelopes, thinking that we're invincible, but we're not.
Oh, so are you saying that you think that disclosure can help with this other issues that you're talking about right now, like warfare or yeah?
It will help in the sense that it will probably, almost certainly, provide an opportunity to rethink it all. And by rethink, I just don't mean a couple of scientists off in a corner somewhere brainstorming about it. I mean, the every government has got to rethink how humans are conducting their affairs on this planet. Um, every scientific community has to do that. The public in general have to do that, right? Um, and right now, that's just not the case.
Yeah.
But in a post-disclosure world, and it's not enough if a couple of countries are thinking about something that's important, but the other 198 are not, right? What you need is you need to have a universal rethink, right, that's almost global, so that everyone is addressing pretty much the same issues and trying to make decisions what to do about it. Right now, we just throw up our hands and go, there's nothing we can do about it. All right. And let's just hope it doesn't blow up. I mean, that's kind of where it is. Meanwhile, governments are taking actions and make things worse. So first is the rethink, the re-examination. Okay. So post-disclosure, you're going to see a lot of organizations and activists trying to make the case in many countries around the world. Okay, now that we know this is true, let's step back and think about how we want to move forward as a country, right? Our policies, right? And how we want to move forward as a collection of countries, spheres of influence, and how do we want to move forward as a civilization? And number one on that list is that can we risk continuing to maintain a roughly 15,000 arsenal of nukes, many of which are, I say missiles, many of which are MIRVed, which have the capacity, if engaged fully, to bring down civilization and cause unbelievable damage that will last for hundreds of years. Can we risk that anymore? That should be the number one question. And if you go watch the media in any country, it's not being addressed. It's totally off to the side. It's kind of like there's nothing we can do about that, so we just hope for the best. I mean, literally, that's where we are as a civilization, right? Politicians won't discuss it. Most scientists will not. There's a couple of groups that get into it, but it's simply not on the table. And it should be number one on the table. Because if the nukes get used, nothing else matters. Global warming doesn't matter. Race relations doesn't matter.
It's over.
Ideological doesn't matter. It's over. And so, number one, post-disclosure, and I assure you, this is going to happen. Number one is many, many groups are going to immediately move forward, starting to demand, and these will be in different countries. All right, now, what are we going to do about this nuke issue? Now that we know the nature, we've learned something very important about the nature of reality and our place in the universe. We're not alone. There's other civilizations. We could engage them. Star travel could happen for us, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. What are we going to do about the nukes? Because they stand always between us and a future. So that's one way, one basic way. But there are thousands of things that will be rethought and examined post-disclosure. It will be the biggest paradigm shift in history. In scientific paradigms, what happens is a paradigm shift will occur in science, and it ripples out and starts affecting a whole range of scientific inquiry in other areas, some not seemingly related. This will be bigger than that, right? This is not a scientific paradigm. This is a worldview paradigm shift, unlike anything we have seen in our history. And therefore, it's virtually going to affect everything and open the door for rethinking as much as you care to rethink, but obviously we need to focus on those areas which are most important to our survival, our future, and our welfare.
Yeah, 100%. And I feel like lately the world is a dangerous place, man. Like when it comes to warfare and all that, I felt like we're kind of in a new Cold War almost. I
We
mean, I'm
are.
not saying, yeah. So, I mean, we got Russia, Ukraine, China, Taiwan, everything going on now with Caribbean. It's getting kind of crazy out there. So it sure would be a good time for something to bring us together and make us think that someone else is also watching what we're doing. Because that's the thing. We kind of just do our thing, don't care, whatever. We run this place, but that's not the case. We're not, there's someone watching very closely and they obviously care. That's why they send, that's why they turn off their nukes. Sometimes they turn
Hopefully,
them on. So,
hopefully they
yeah,
care. Christian, how old are you?
I'm 37 years old.
Okay, 37. Well, you don't look
Yeah.
37. Let's see, 37. That's 1988. You were born in
1988.
1988?
Yep.
Okay, you're not Gen Z. I
No,
think you're Gen X. Are you Gen X? Yeah, you're Gen X.
Gen X.
Borderline. Gen X, not about 7 years from Gen Z. Um,
Yeah.
well, as you're probably aware, there's something going on with the Gen Zs out there. The ones born between 97 and 2012. Um, they're very unhappy. And even in the developed countries like the United States, not happy. But as you get into the less developed countries, the high, much more populated, less developed countries, they are really unhappy. Why? Because to the extent that they're educated and they're starting to learn about this world, they don't see a future. They don't see, in other words, what I say by future, meaning a future in which their expectations, which are easy to accumulate because if you've got access to media, you can learn about what you could have and what you could do and what's happening in the rest of the world, right? This wasn't true of people during 300,000 years ago. They didn't have expectations. They just wanted to stay alive from day to day. And so the
Mhm.
idea of having a home, having a job, having families, all of these things, having some comfort, right? These expectations are evaporating literally in real time. They're just disappearing because we have not taken care, we have not uh, learned how to live together. We have not adapted to the world that we have created, which is 8.3 billion people. And we have refused to make changes in our behavior. Uh, and as a result, this generation, the largest generation on the planet right now, Gen Zs, all right, they're the largest. I think it's like 2.8 billion, something like that.
Mhm.
They're looking at the numbers and going, I don't have a future. I'm not going to be able to have a home. I'm not going to be able to maybe have an education. I'll be lucky if I can get food, water, and clothing. And they are revolting. They are turning to the streets. This is quite different than probably. You remember you had what was it, the color revolutions or whatever it was? And there have been a number of these over the years for different reasons. I get it. This one
Mhm.
is different. This is not so much. Well, it's different in the sense that it seems to have a commonality that stretches across many nations. It's a generational, literally generational. It's not like a group of people in a particular country are really angry with their government and they realize, we got to bring this down so things will get better. This is more almost existential, meaning
Yeah,
it's
man.
not it's not just the government. I don't like the government I'm in. As I learn about the situation globally, as I learn about the nature of things globally, I don't see a future. I don't see how I'm going to be able to do these things. It's going to be not fun. It's going to be unpleasant. It's and it doesn't mean you can't overcome it. Any single individual could still overcome what they're up against now if you have the drive, the ability, maybe the intelligence or other gifts, and you really apply and work hard, you can possibly get over it. We understand that. And that's part of being human, part of existence. But let's face it, that's the world isn't you can't have a world in which the vast majority of people are just not going to be able to overcome it. For whatever reason, it doesn't matter. And so the number of discontent grow 100 million, a billion 2.5 billion, and that they're just going to accept the hopelessness of their existence and the suffering they're going to, and not get irritated. And so the Gen Z revolution, revolts that are taking place and bringing down governments right now are as clear as a message as we can that we have to have a paradigm shift, worldview change apart globally in order to get things to a place where the next generation feels that it has a place and it has a future. We can't, and if the Gen Zs are feeling this way, I don't know what the hell they're going to call the next generation. I think I've heard alpha, but what they're going to think, I cannot even imagine. And so things are just going to get worse and worse. And therefore, I consider the disclosure movement the most important movement on the planet. Nothing else comes close. No guarantee that if we succeed in this movement, that things will profoundly get better, but it's the
We got
best
to do
shot
it.
we have.
And it's something that has to get done sooner or later. And this seems like the perfect time for it. So let's go. Like, let's do what we have to do. Let's hopefully something can trigger the press, because that's what we got left. I mean, we've done it all. We've done hearings. We've done, we've had people come forward. All that's left is for the president to, address the nation basically
That's
and
right.
make his announcement.
To make it tomorrow. The barriers that used to exist for a president to step out and simply end this truth embargo and confirm, yeah, we're not alone, however they want to do it, and then have that reconfirmed by other heads of state is pretty much, it's gone. There's really no
Yeah.
barrier other than a decision to make it. I'm not saying there isn't resistance. There's still some pushback and shenanigans going on, but overall the barrier is gone. So it could happen at any time.
Yeah.
Now let me just shift. We can finish
We
up because I want
got
to get
1 minute left here. Just letting you know. We can do it again if you want. I can.
Wait a minute. In other words, you only have 1 minute left on your Zoom setup I mean the stream.
Yeah. So I would have to send you a new link, and we'd have to start another one,
Yeah,
and then I can.
I'll tell you what. Why don't you do that, and then we'll do another 10 minutes, and we'll wrap it up, and then you can edit it together.
All right. Sounds good. Let's do that.
All right. So I'll shut down.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll send you a new link here.
Thank you.
All right.
That something happened that they may not have anticipated. First, you have the internet, right? Mid-90s. Okay. Remember the Gen Z start getting born in 97. So right as the internet is taking off, all right. And then you have the expansion or the ability for high bandwidth and so forth. In other words, the amount of material you can push through the pipeline grows and grows and grows with fiber optics and so forth. And so you've got the internet, but the power of the internet grows and grows in terms of its ability to drive information. All right. You have the evolution of websites. And then you have the transition from radio to internet, when the radio shows are now going on the internet. And then, of course, you have the rise of YouTube and video on the internet, all of which is driving a mass information wave moving into the future, which any authority, whether it's religious, scientific, or political, has got to get control of if they intend to succeed in dominating. And then comes the podcast. And why the podcast has become so significant is, one, you've got generations of kids who literally were born with a computer, born with these devices. They're virtually connected to them. They have great facility with them. They're part of their world, right? Secondly, you have the incredible price drop in high technology in terms of cameras and microphones and so forth. What cost thousands now costs $50, $80. High quality cameras, high bandwidth, internet reaching the entire world. Okay, and then just to cap it off, you have the universal availability of editing software, literally free. In other words, anybody can get their hands on editing software and teach themselves how to edit material in a way that only high-level professionals in the 1960s and 50s could do, right? In fact, even better than that. DaVinci Resolve, which is probably more complicated than quantum physics, is free. And so these generations then learn the software. They learn the editing software, and now they're producing video content that's getting on YouTube and going worldwide of a quality equivalent to the professional output in 60s and 70s journalism, and even now. In fact, right now, I see YouTube videos done by a single individual that compares at the level of 60 minutes. So now you have this moving forward, and so it is uncontrollable. The only way you can control this is if you literally create a hermit kingdom like North Korea, right? Or you exercise enormous influence on access to the internet, but it's tricky because the internet now can be gotten from space. And so the only way that, say, China can control that is you've got to control the access to devices that can actually pull it down from space. It is a losing cause, particularly in any reasonable governments. And so the late millennials and the early Gen Zs are both very frustrated and angry that the future seems to be taken away from them, but they have access to the most powerful information tools ever, and they are driving this information out. And so it is the intersection of these two things, the truth, the disclosure movement, the demand to end that particular policy, and this other technological movement being driven by these two generations that absolutely guarantees that we will get disclosure. And once we get it, imagine a post-disclosure world in which now information is coming out from governments all around the world, what we've learned from ET technology, what we've learned in all of this respect that's being hidden from them, now becoming available to millions of podcasters who can then take it, work with it, use AI to manipulate it, whatever, and then put it back out. In other words, the golden age of being a Gen Z influencer and media creator hasn't even begun yet. That is what is the idea I wanted to get across. And now you have joined that. You're now part of that movement. And so I welcome you.
I appreciate that, man. I appreciate that. I'm still learning a lot, but everything you said is so true. I've been learning slowly, but teaching myself how to edit things that I didn't know how to do that before, and just it's fun, and I love talking about this. This topic is so interesting to me, honestly, and I don't see how it cannot be interesting to other people. People are dying of hunger
Oh,
for
it
this
is.
topic.
Of course.
It's fascinating. I mean, and even now, mainstream news, it doesn't even matter as much as it used to because of uh, Twitter or X, podcast. But even now they're in the game too. Like there's, still, they saw Dan Farah making the rounds pretty much in everywhere. And so everybody's interested in this. And where we'll be in 10 years, I don't know, man. But it seems like it's not stopping. We're getting there. We're getting closer to the bodies. Like that's what's next, I think. And yeah, thanks for the welcome. I appreciate that. I'm really happy. It was a good conversation. And
Well,
I
let me
think
add
I
something
can,
else, Christian.
yeah,
Look, first of all, okay, you're going to learn the editing software. Pick something that you can handle. Don't. I tried to learn DaVinci Resolve. I nearly had a nervous breakdown. But there's lots of that. Okay, get
yeah,
the best camera that you can afford, but it's not that expensive. Best mic. All right. Develop a studio type background. All right.
yeah,
You can use the artificials. You can use those. It's not awful. They get a little bit better. There's always a little aspect, but either that or a real studio background. Okay.
right.
You've got a good name. Kill the Stigma is a pretty good name because one of the fundamental tasks of the truth embargo from the day it began was to reduce and even eliminate the stigma that the government had spent fortunes building up. In other words, one of the principal things the government was able to do was to support, encourage people demeaning, ridiculing, stigmatizing the people in the issues that they were going after, the language and terminology, and coming up with demeaning phrases and so forth. Ridicule. I call it the creation of an intellectual ghetto. And so that stigma has taken 70 some years to really finally undermine, and it's pretty much undermined now. It's simply not there. Where in the mainstream media, it's almost gone, and so it's not but it's not completely gone, and so killing the stigma is a good name because ultimately that is what this movement had to do: kill that stigma, get rid of it, and therefore open the issue up and make it easy for everyone to be part of it. So I think you got a nice package, and keep in touch. Let me know how things are going. Obviously, you need to look into the platforms. What are the options? Where can you go? How many can you use? And all that kind of stuff. I know this at this point, if you just Google AI, how to create a broad platform, uh, 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 um, uh, what am I trying to say? Podcast, right? How to create a blog platform. You get this, right? It gives you everything, right? Oh yeah, you do this, and that's another thing. AI in its early stage, which is the fun stage, the good times. It's a great tool. It's helpful. There's almost no downside to it. Uh, that's going to change, but this is the golden age of, I would say, the fun part of AI. It is also being used by these generations, these two generations, as part of their content creation, which the previous generations didn't even have. And so that is another aspect of it. It is an overwhelming media wave moving into the future that tiny little governments are looking up at this tsunami and going, no, 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 you can't do that now. We've got secrets to keep, right? And thinking that they can win that. They can't.
They
And
can't.
so welcome to the party.
Thanks, man. Thanks.
All
I'm
right.
gonna surf that wave, and I appreciate that. Yeah, man, Steven, it was great talking to you. I'll see you around, and we'll keep in touch. All right.
Absolutely.
All right, man. Take care. Have a
Bye.
good Sunday. Bye.